Welcome back to Round the Game, an honest conversation with people who have a unique experience to this game that we love. Today, have a great guest, up and coming play-by-play commentator, Hoops Grid savant, and the host of the Across the Cavs podcast. Everybody, welcome Zach Weiss.
Great to be on, Austin. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking some ball and all facets. The pro game, play-by-play game. We can talk D3, we can talk D5. Honestly, I always happy to talk basketball. It's my first passion when I was a young kid, and it's parlayed for me into so many cool things as I've gotten older. So
for my audience, I kind of want to know who you are as the basketball fan. We can see behind you a little bit that you are a Cleveland Cavaliers fan. Did your love for the game start there? Are you a LeBron guy? Tell me the story there.
Yeah, so I grew up in New Jersey. Not too many people that grow up in New Jersey and don't go to Ohio until they turn 27 for the first time could really call themselves a big Cavs fan. So we were about 35 minutes from East Rutherford. Funnily enough, I lived for 2 years about a mile and a half from the Meadowlands. So in my adult life, but I loved the Cavs when they drafted LeBron. I was a LeBron guy. I was 7 years old. I loved his highlights. And you're talking to a guy that had a J. Kidd jersey, a Kenyon Martin jersey, that would watch all the Nets games. Obviously, when you're 5 years old going to basketball games, your parents are taking you out at halftime. You're not staying the whole game, You got school, you got homework, you got to go to bed at 7:30, 8 o'clock. These are late starts. But I had a lot of good memories of going to Nets games. And then for LeBron's first tenure, every year he would come when the Nets were still in Jersey. We would go watch the game. When he came back to Cleveland, I was able to watch him twice when I was in school in Boston. But I'm a Cavs fan initially because of LeBron. It grew. My first non-LeBron big gear was a Boobie Gibson jersey in 2010, right after he went to Miami. And from there, we got the Tristan Thompson gear, fell in love with Dellavedova's game. As you see the picture behind me, it's Delly guarding Pablo Prigioni with Amari fronting Tyler Zeller in the post. Delly signed said poster. That was a gift to me a couple years ago. First thing I put up on the recording wall, and to see some bobbleheads above that are off screen. But I've been a Cavs diehard for a long time, and every experience I have when I've actually gone to Cleveland, or I'll be next weekend, has been special. And it's amazing that it holds up like that for someone that got into them from a distance to then go and feel like that's my squad, and I'm really watching them in person in their stadium, not them as visitors anymore.
It's just a real shame. You grew up it's in such close proximity to great basketball franchises, and the Knicks, the Nets to some extent. You went to school in Boston. You could have been one of us, but the Cavs, rough luck of the draw there, pal.
Well, it's been up and down, but truly, I don't think you can appreciate being a basketball fan of a team until you go through bad seasons. And it's when guys like Manny Harris and Jeremy Pargo, Samardo Samuels, Alonzo G, the Baron Davis experiment at the end of his career, that you can really appreciate being a fan, because you used to be happy if they beat the 25 or 30 win teams. Now it's every day they lose, they're in the headlines again. It's been like that for the majority, but those first 4 years without LeBron, those were my what was that? Those were my high school years, and that's really when I feel like I became a true all-around Cavs fan. It's like, all right, you know what? That's fine. I would see them twice a year, because it's very easy to get a ticket to MSG when LeBron's not on your team. So I was at Cavs Knicks, I was at Cavs Nets. I was able to go to a couple a year in those years, and I always had fun. Even when Semir Dan, unfortunately, was the starting center. With all due respect to him, I hope he's doing well, but he was not my favorite Cavs center.
So now that we kind of get a little glimpse of who you are as the Cavs fan, of course, I said at the beginning of the show that you are a play-by-play guy. And I truly respect and adore those kind of guys. I love commentary teams because it is so difficult. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But I want to know, when you were growing up, who did you idolize? Who did you take notes from?
So I was, honestly, and this is a fact, I promise this is not a lie, maybe 4 or 5 years old when I decided that I liked basketball enough to want to do something when I got older. I'd be in the backyard just trying to figure out, I didn't know who I was emulating at this time. Maybe it was just inner me. But I'd get out in the court and I'd be shooting like everybody. I have vivid memories of pairing Stacey Augmon, so I would shoot lefty, against Gennaro Pargo one-on-one in my backyard. Every fictional game was to 30 by 2s and 3s. We had about a 19 or 20-foot blacktop with a hoop. Very fortunate to have that in our yard. So I got so into it. I was lucky to have an older brother who was 3.5 years older than me that already loved basketball. and fortunate enough to have an N64 with NBA Live, NBA in the Zone, and NBA Showtime while having a mini hoop in the basement. Or my brother and we would honestly draft fictional players. Maybe he just went along with it for me. I remember then we switched to the W. I was Lisa Leslie. He was Tina Thompson one game, and we would just change our forms, and I would not be able to stop commentating. So it started really young. And watching the Nets and Knicks, obviously I would have to say it would be Ian Eagle, Marv Albert, Mike Breen would be the ones. But when I was younger, there was nobody specifically I'm like, I want to be like them. It's really just more a case, I love this game so much. I don't have a filter when it comes to basketball. So wherever I go with my parents as a really young kid, if there's adults around and I hear anything basketball, then they're probably not going to be able to get me to stop for at least an hour. Just so excited to share knowledge of the game, passion of the game, and that's really where it began as a young kid, and it didn't stop. I didn't get my first game until college, but I'm sure that's going to be a separate question, so I don't want to give too much away at once here.
I do want to dig into that a little bit, but before we jump into that, I have to ask, who would be your dream broadcast partner? Who's your color guy?
I think that answer's definitely changed as I've gotten older. I think if I was just starting out and I want someone, I would have to be biased and say Austin Carr. He doesn't do much color for the Cavs anymore, but I just always loved his energy, his witticisms. From the Cavs have changed stadium names so many times. At first it was from deep in the queue, and Fred McLeod, obviously the play-by-play guy, says write down Euclid. And even though I'm not announcing games in Ohio, I still sometimes will say write down Euclid if they coast right down the lane for a quick bucket. I've got your back when someone comes away with a block. Not that many color guys have phrases, and I just always liked his energy, his positivity, and he laughs so much in a positive way that I feel like the big guys I've seen, other than when Tony Romo first came into the league, you just don't have guys that seem like they're having so much fun. Not that they're not, but you can feel it even if you're watching for a minute. So I would say Austin Carr. If I was younger, honestly, maybe Jim Spinarkle. I don't remember a ton of his banter with Ian, just because I've watched so many games, but it's the commentary that doesn't always stand out unless they were like epic, wild finishes. Like I remember the Marv Albert calling the Devin Harris half-court shot in 2008, where he fumbles the ball and puts it in. But a good local commentator, knows the game, played in the NBA, and I think getting someone with the playing experience versus the coaching experience, you get a really nice angle of how they're running a system and a team's not working. Because you just want someone that knows the game, you can banter with, and won't ramble for too long.
When people start getting into this profession, I feel like there's a Robert Frost fork in the road that they have to pick. They either have to be a color guy or they have to be a play-by-play guy. Was there a definitive moment for you to pick one or the other? Did you ever try to be a color guy and you just didn't like it, or what was the story there?
Yeah, so sometimes with gigs, I'm still doing color. It's never been a preference. I think if doing color is a way in the door somewhere to get more play-by-play, you'll absolutely do it. If there's a big game, high stakes, and I could work the game only as color, I would absolutely do it. I've worked color for so many sports outside of basketball that I do nothing about. I worked Ivy League playoff games for sports outside of basketball that I've only ever done play-by-play for. Sometimes you just got to jump in where the opportunity is. It's just, for me, it's the storytelling. And when you're on color, you're essentially just the X's and O's. You're breaking it down. You might toss an anecdote, but you're just enhancing what the play-by-play guy is saying. And for me, who's just always been a storyteller, I feel like play-by-play is the space where you have that freedom to do that. And I feel like I'm more of a setup person than being set up to further describe, unless we're talking pregame, postgame, but that's really not the commentary side of things.
I think for a lot of people that are around this space and love this game, when they're young, they'll give their hand at it. They'll put the TV on mute. They'll try to do what Marv Albert and Mike Breen do. And I think early on, they realize that they're not very good at it. At what point did you realize that you had something, that you had a knack for it, instead of the exact opposite that I experienced when I was 7 years old?
Well, the obvious answer here would be no, but technically nobody would admit that they're good in this circumstance. However, what I would say is I did my first game when I was 19. It was the second week back, or it might have even been the first full week back from winter break at school, college, and I was definitely nervous. I unfortunately don't have the footage of the first game. I have a call or two, but I don't have the footage because they changed where they keep the archives by the time I graduated and lost them all. And so I had URLs to the old one, which don't exist anymore. But what I would say was I always had a passion for it, and I guess I didn't know that I didn't stink until they invited me back to do it again. The first game, I met my partner for that game 50 minutes before. He's also a big sports fan. He had transferred to the school, was also the starting goalie for the soccer team, but obviously he came in the winter. I didn't know that till the next year. He ended up breaking the shutout record for a single season. He was insane. 5'10", Division three goalie, absolute lights out with 13 clean sheets in a season. Honestly, shout out Nick Weinstein, my first shout out here. It's that second game, and it's knowing that I only got a couple of basketball games because he was a little more senior than me, and they had a guy. Over my next 3 years, it obviously changed, but when they offered me the baseball season as my freshman year, every game, I'm like, all right, they want to try me here, and I think it was when I called my first walk-off home run in baseball, and it turned out to be the only one I ever called while I was there. I've had a few others, all in softball, never in baseball, not since my first 2 weeks. And I remember the whole call. It came in the 11th inning, Endicott College versus Wheaton College, nice little Massachusetts battle. The team all saw the clip because the school posted all the clips. I didn't have many during basketball season. Kind of felt very welcomed in when they appreciated it. They enjoyed it. In the dining hall past, they were all sitting together. Brought me over. We had a little chat. There were a few other times where that happened, and when I was in school, and that kind of to me is like, you know what? They're appreciating it. A lot goes in, and you never do it for yourself when you're doing games. You're never bigger than any moment that's happening. As long as you can properly enhance what people are watching, don't be the one that gets muted. Keep things exciting, bring new information. I think that's what it's about. And so moments like that, especially starting with that baseball one, telling you know what, hey, maybe I could stick with this. And obviously, 11 years later, I am still doing a whole bunch of sports, a whole lot of games, very frequently.
Is there a particular sport that you do that's more difficult than the other ones? From like an outsider's experience, I would have to feel that because of your love for basketball, that would probably be a little easier, say to a sport that you're not so interested in.
Yes, basketball is definitely simpler. So I had a couple games earlier this week. I got two more tomorrow afternoon. I would say basketball is the most comfortable, whether with a partner or solo. But this year, I've been wanting to do this. I had done public address announcing for it, never play-by-play. I did my first wrestling match in November, and I did not have an analyst. And good or bad, the number 10 team in Division One was the opponent for the home team of the meet, the dual meet that I was doing. And so we got top 5 wrestlers in the nation getting in their weight class, getting on this mat where I'm making my debut. I was definitely nervous, but also energized because I hadn't done a new sport for the first time new in 8 years or 6 years. Tennis was a weird one. I did tennis once. I was supposed to do water polo, but there was an issue with the pool on my way down, so it never happened. But I do 7 sports throughout the year pretty regularly. So in the fall, we have soccer, we have women's volleyball, and we have field hockey. And field hockey was a learning curve, but it's one I've really started to enjoy. The winter, it's basketball, a little bit of wrestling. I have a second opportunity next week. Very excited. This one's D3. The first one was D1. But earned that one. They don't usually stream it, but they're going to do that. I'm able to get an extra gig. And then men's volleyball for me also starts next week. Kind of crossover with basketball. And then in the spring, it's baseball, softball, continuation of volleyball and lacrosse. They're all tricky, honestly, in their own way, but something I learned through our lacrosse coach when I was in school. He said it's very much like basketball. They set picks, they got a score, they added the shot clock in the last 5 or 6 years to the game to speed things up, both the men and women's side, which are very different sports. And so I had that to kind of fall on. Field hockey to me is just soccer with more possession change, different terminology. Volleyball is the one where your energy really shines through, but basketball is obviously the favorite. I think I'd be doing a disservice to my whole life by saying otherwise. But I found that soccer can be very tricky, but it's probably my 1B favorite because you have the full game to tell stories. There's so much to be said, and whenever you're watching, you got a good matchup. There's no score. It's tied in the last 5 minutes. Anything can happen. And then when you get into college playoff, you get golden goal, you get that. I've called multiple conference championships that ended in PKs, came down to the last shot, and it's just all at the end of the day. If you can call one, you can call anything. You do the same prep, you get the same notes, and you're just putting it all together. I know we'll get to that, but you do all your research, take bundles and bundles and bundles of information, take all those oodles and just turn it into essentially a study guide, if you will, for the game at hand.
I do want to talk about the prep because I think a lot of people naively think that they can just hop on to any headset and just call a game like that. There's a tremendous amount of prep. The best ones do it, obviously, but there's a tremendous amount of prep that goes into each game and each event. What does your prep look like? What's like a 2 to 3 day prep and then game day look like for you? For basketball, this is a basketball channel after all.
Absolutely. So for basketball, like tomorrow, for example, I've got 2 games, doubleheader. So it's a men-women doubleheader. It is different by game and schedule. If I'm doing a season opener, my prep is very different than a mid-season game. Ideally, you always want to talk to the coaches beforehand, but sometimes you just can't. Anytime there's a season opener, first game, I will always have an extensive chat with the coach. Let's talk about last season. Let's talk about next season. Who are the first-year players? Who are the new people that we want to highlight? Who are you going to miss the most? Goals for the season. How are you going to beat this team? And then if they're a veteran coach and I haven't called them before, would love to just hear a bit about their favorite memory. Not everyone's going to give you the time of day or the same amount of time. I had a coach earlier this year say, yeah, we can talk before the game, but no X's and O's, nothing about players and no keys, nothing. Okay. So there's things you can do, but that was a new one. In 12 years, talked to dozens and dozens of coaches, and I've never heard that before. Ended up being a great match, and I never actually had the conversation. It was 2-2. And one of their players had a nasty goal, probably one of the best I saw this whole year. But getting back to basketball, I would say I don't do boards. A lot of people do those big boards, print them out. I do not. For the last year and a half, have utilized the Notes app, and my process has evolved significantly. I use the Notes app. I usually have 2 to 4 tabs I'll go between. Tab 1, it starts out, we got 4 to 6 quick hits for my intro and maybe to touch on in mid-game. We got the record probably from the past 10 years, recent performance, history of matchups against the team they're playing. Sometimes there's a nugget if there was a player of the week, someone went crazy, something about the history. So one of my games this weekend, the team's only been around 10 years. They really haven't had a great season, any great seasons, but they do have the number 9 scorer in the country. So there's a great tool where I'm able to go through for the college level and find for each college every single national ranking for every single player, most points, rebound, assists, for where they stand in conference versus nationally. So anytime someone's top 25, the matchup tomorrow, the home team for both has 11 wins in 14 games. There's a lot to be had there. Double-doubles, buckets, a lot of steals. I'll usually do that, and then we will go into recent performance. If they're on a winning streak, I'll highlight the top 3 players in my notes from each game. If they do not have a streak, it'll just be the last game. Then, even though they're available online, I'll do leaders for basketball, goes points, rebounds, assists. I do threes made. I check the percentages later. Obviously, if someone's shooting 30%, but they're a volume shooter, they're going to have a good day or a bad day. We only reference the percentage if they're having a bad day. And we got free throw percentage, steals, blocks. So we got 7 categories. And then below that, we have the player bios, what they did in high school, what they've done previously, top game of that season. We'll do that for both teams. And then you add in the coach chats, which are anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes. So I have that as well. I'll usually use that in the beginning with keys. If it's a blowout, I'll use a lot more coach information in the second half and as the game winds down. So honestly, I'm a very fast typer. I do everything digitally. I'll have all my stuff set. It maybe takes me 30 minutes to an hour. This depends. For basketball specifically, it takes me about maybe 30 minutes to an hour to do the player bios per team. Only about 20 minutes to lay out the first part, so performers and all that. Most important, though, and not everyone sends the messages before, you have to have your pronunciations in order. That is not something you just learn overnight. You have to say those names again and again. You got to get familiar with the jerseys. It does take me about a minute or two once a game starts with new teams to realize who's wearing what number, because even though there's only 5 at a time in basketball, it's a lot harder than you think when you're calling a game with all people you haven't seen yet and you've only read about. Because, when I'm reading these people, I'm not memorizing their faces, I'm memorizing their jersey and all that. I don't know what they look like most of the time. I'm not spending a lot of time and I'm seeing the headshot in their profile, but you're doing all that. You're emailing the SID or talking to the coach saying, hey, can we run through all the names? You get the injury report so you know not to over prep for some of these players that are out. And you just want to make sure you have it in order. And if you have a partner for that game, it sometimes makes it trickier because you might not be able to find a call time that works, and you just share notes and do all that.
I've found recently that the game boards are actually more divisive than what I had originally anticipated. There are some people that swear by it. It is their Bible, it's their go to. And then other people hate it because they put too much information on it and they put too much prep work into it. Like, for instance, I don't know the guy's name. If I can think of it or if I find it, I'll put his handle above me somewhere. But he's the play-by-play guy for the Clippers G League affiliate team, and he uses game boards, and he puts so much information into like the player info section. So like if they go to the free throw line, they can give a little anecdote about the whole thing. And he says that he puts so much information to every single player, and then like 75% of it just goes to waste. And he's like a little angry about it. He still uses the game boards, obviously, but yeah, I never expected game boards to be a little divisive. I figured that was a layup for a lot of people, but I'm glad to see your insight on it as well.
Yeah, but no, see, the thing is, that's normal. It stinks. Like, I hate it because for the home team, for the most part, I'm going to see them again. I can talk to the coach before the season and get nuggets that come up every game. I don't have to just throw it in, but it is hard. And there's a team I did this year that's transitioning to another division, so I don't know if I'm going to see them again after this year. So I had a lot of good stuff. They didn't have a great day that day. I couldn't use a lot of it. But it is what it is. It stinks. You feel great when you can get certain ones in, but then sometimes you're just not ready when that one opportunity comes with that, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, the only person that's going to know how much prep and that is you. You are the only one as the announcer that knows what you did, so you're going to be the only one not using it. But hey, I will also add that if should you see that team later, you are so ready to go the second time because you're still going to do the same prep and then some, but I've had times where I got to use it a second time where I get games added to my schedule pretty late in the I didn't think I was going to see that team again, whether it's in the playoffs, in the conference, if it's just a second meeting, whatever the case, and it's like, all right, we're in business, especially in I know this is basketball, but in volleyball you might get a non-conference team twice because you need someone to fill out your tri-match. But on the basketball side, still, like, I love it. Love when I see a team 2 or 3 times as a visitor. Like, oh, I saw you. I know what's up. I know this coach well. We're going to have a great call because we're going to have so much to use that's unused. But yeah, it gets thrown out. There's no such thing as too much prep. Because just like with anything, you'd rather be... And, just like when you're planning for a vacation, like, do I want to pay the extra to make sure if I have to cancel this, then I can cancel it at no cost, keep it simple? Or do I just want to say, nah, we're going to go, we're good. And you put the extra measures in to do all this extra stuff. And when you're planning a trip, let's plan 20 activities, but maybe you over-plan, you don't want to do it all, but maybe you have them there if you need them. If you want to do all that. Like, your friends that give you recommendations, you have them all in your back pocket. Maybe you don't want to use any, but better to be over-prepared than under-prepared any day of the week.
I think for a lot of people too, they have like object permanence when it comes to this particular thing. They turn on a game on ESPN and they hear Mike Breen and Stan Van Gundy, and they just think that that's it. You have your partner for life, and that's it. For a lot of people, especially in your situation, you're probably meeting these people for the first time or like have very limited interactions with them. How do you build chemistry with your partner in such a short amount of time?
Yeah, so great question. I mentioned Nick Weinstein in the beginning. And it's funny because I did watch the game back, and we were live so early, didn't realize it. So, like myself, he has favorite sports teams nowhere near where he lives. All my teams are not New Jersey, New York, although it just obviously started and we're on the Cavs. So we talked a lot about that. He obviously changing schools. And he was at a D1 school before he Endicott is D3, so he transferred from D1. We talked a ton about the differences and all that. Some people, you find out if they're a sports fan. I always get there. Most games, I'll get to 60 to 90 minutes early, but it also depends. In the pros, you're getting there 3 hours before 3.5. That's just part of your day. That's it. I have gotten to games 3 hours early. It is not proven to be necessary or beneficial. Hour and a half honestly is fine. You got to, if the coach is there early, that's great. If you want to meet the person that hired you for that game, or you hadn't met that as a year, it's a new school. Yeah, if you want to catch up, absolutely. You just want to get there and not think about things at home, and you want to just get to the venue. That's also great. But yeah, I've stepped in this year too with a lot of new people, and sometimes they'll actually reach out to talk beforehand. I think every single analyst that I've worked with is different in a way. There are people I love specifically having that I've worked with before, and if I have the chance to pick my own, because in a lot of cases I don't have that. That's understandable, but there are a few situations where I get to hand pick who I'm going to work with for these specific games on these specific days, and I've made a lot of cool friends that are all doing. We're all chasing the same thing, colleagues, if you will, and so to pair together sometimes, same energy, same passion. It's awesome. But if you don't have a chance to talk before because you're not always, you kind of just have to figure out the biggest thing. And I think you really only need two things to be successful with someone else. Know their speaking pattern. When are they finishing a sentence? And when does it sound like they're going to stop and keep going? And then two is, are they very detailed or are they short detail? If you're working with someone that's quick, one or two sentences to describe what happened, and I'm getting it back with 19 on the shot clock, great. But if they're going to talk for 20 seconds and I just have to jump in after the shot goes in, which was a case last week, my partner is kind of on both areas of that, and all right, I'll be ready to come in. I'm watching the action as they're talking. But it's kind of a never-ending thing. It sometimes it just doesn't work, and if that's the case, just get through the game. But you're doing it for everyone else. You both have the same goal. As the color person knows, they want to add some intelligence to the broadcast and kind of go deeper on the things you're saying. And for me as well, especially with new people, I will try at least once or twice a quarter or half at the least to set them up with a question instead of just not talking, because that's where you have those silences where you just never know if something's going to be filled or not.
A buddy of mine that I used to work with did commentary for his school while he was in college, the football team. And he would tell me of these horror stories that he had, whether that was chemistry with a partner or he flubbed a name or whatever the case was. Could you give me a horror story? Or if you don't want to focus on the negative, could you give me this triumph that you've had so far?
I see you want a negative and a positive?
I'd love both, yeah.
Let me think. On a negative. I mean, there's been plenty. Oh, all right, yeah, I actually had a really bad one. It was not basketball, though, but still. And I'm very happy that I was able to go back. It's a school I've been at a long time. It was a pretty highly watched game. I was doing field hockey, and they changed the rules a couple of years ago. I'm not sure how familiar you are with field hockey, but when I started doing games, there were two 35-minute halves instead of now 4 15-minute quarters. They shortened the game. They used to have a running clock. The clock doesn't stop at all unless someone scores. And you play it through. There's something called a penalty corner. There's a foul in the shooting area. It's kind of like a corner kick. You move someone out to the top, pass it in, and go. With the old rules, the half would not end until the ball is cleared up. I was under the assumption that because we stopped the clock and do all that, they're not going to have time. This is a meaningless corner. They got fouled with 3 seconds. It takes at least 6 to 10 seconds to pass it up and get a shot. When they kept going and scored, I said, it's not going to count. We're going to go to halftime. I was unaware, and we were on for another minute. I didn't know, and I should know this because I have rule books and all that, but there's so much prep to do, and I think I had three other dates that same week with two others. It's crossover. Volleyball, soccer, field hockey all together, and I hadn't done. This was the only school I did games for this fall. At this point, it was only my second game in the last 2 years. Admittedly, I was rusty on that. I'm usually very X's and O's, and I talk about X's and O's in a very break it down way for people that might be watching for the first time, maybe once or twice on the broadcast. And I totally flubbed it, missed it. I talked to my producer. He said, it happens. It's all right. I didn't hear I've been back for other games there since then, but I've thought about it a lot. And it's I definitely failed that day. The team scored. That's the only time I didn't even post a highlight reel after, just because I didn't want to. I made my mistake. I honor it. I acknowledge it. I apologize for it in an email after, which I actually never heard back on, but again, still got brought back. It happens. Been doing the sport for 8 years. It's the first time. Positive. Definitely a few. I mean, sometimes there's these crazy anecdotes you can get into. I'd say, all right, positive would be this. There was a game I called D1 volleyball in the fall, and it was set point for the home team, and they served it. It dropped off the net. They thought they had an ace. They started celebrating. Visiting team returns the ball. Ref never blew the whistle. And we had instant replay. You could clearly see the ball never touched. The fans behind you yelling, "What a bad call! You've been making bad calls all match." They win that point when it was Columbia New Haven. They thought they lost the set. They win the point instead. Then they win the set. They also win the match. I posted said clip as well. Obviously, I was happy with my call of that situation because I've never seen that. I've been doing volleyball since 2017, and I posted it, and it reached. I didn't tag any of the players. It was a TikTok post. I didn't tag any of the players, and they all found it. Everyone involved in the game found it on their own. It did so well and got so much traction in such a crazy situation. It got picked up as the craziest play in the conference for that week. And it was just really cool to see it move. Because obviously you call the game for the people live, and the big thing with tech and how we're talking now in 2 different states here. Modern technology, editing, clipping, posting. I had myself on the bottom, so you have my reaction actually visibly, as well as the audio over it, with the play on top, and it was just a crazy situation. I've never had a call get that much traction after, so it's been fun to just watch it back, and sometimes it gets sent back to me. And just being ready for that situation, I'd say, was a big triumph, because when the moment happens, you have to be ready. If you're a half second late, it's ruined. Any sport, any moment. So you have to be on the entire match, every sport, every day. Whether you're doing 1 game in a day, I've done 4 games in a day, I've done 6 games in 24 hours before. You got to be ready for it all. Otherwise, the people involved you miss the moment, kind of ruins it.
For any basketball fan that may be watching this that wants to take this path that you've taken, is there a piece of advice that you would give them, like one that stands out?
Yeah, I think with basketball, especially, and I know a lot of my examples have been in other areas, but actually, I'll add one more real quick, just backpedaling. I called a buzzer beater for the first time ever in basketball last week. Shot got waved off after. Thought it was in. And then they said no. So being ready with that. Just, again, being ready. I would say for calling basketball, definitely a sport you can watch first, whereas some other ones might be harder to get into. Listen to some other people. Watch some footage next time you're watching your favorite pro, college, high school team, if they have commentators. Listen to how they call it. But biggest thing for being a commentator is make your own path, have your own style. I'm not a catchphrase person. I do have a phrase, but it's not on game winners. The phrase is muffins for everybody. I've been using it for 4 years. My girlfriend gave me a list of words to use on a broadcast a few years back, and muffins and party were 2 of the words. I believe the way it came in was a lacrosse call, and this is basketball. It will tie back, I promise. And a bunch of players scored for them. I think 8 or 9 players had a goal. So I said party on, muffins for everybody. Essentially, it just means everyone's a part of the game. In basketball is where everybody's getting buckets that day. In baseball, if it's a walk-off home run, I had muffins for everybody at home plate. In lacrosse, everybody scores. They're all getting a piece. In soccer, even if they have 5 players getting an assist, or you're just having a good day, I don't think you need a signature phrase. Marv has yes, and Breen has bang, bang. Ian's got his little ones like rack attack and all that, and Kevin was like, good. You don't need that. You're not trying to be Kevin Harlan or Ian Eagle or Mike. I'm trying to be the next Zach Weiss. And when I'm hopping on, that's it. Don't try to be someone you're not. Do what comes natural. You also just got to find, if you're somebody that gets very excited, just figure out ways when to raise your voice, when to get excited. Because the biggest thing, people come in screaming or people come in too quiet. And yes, as you can hear, I do have a loud voice. I'm told that a lot in my everyday life, well off the mic, because it's hard to turn it off because we're always in broadcast mode. But I think voice modulation is important, and understanding that you can just be yourself. Be yourself on the mic, get excited. You don't have to be anyone else. You shouldn't be anyone else. Because if they wanted that other person, if they wanted Ian Eagle, they would hire Ian Eagle. They wouldn't hire you.
I've had a lot of people on this channel as guests, and there's been this through line of authenticity, finding your own voice, and I cannot stress that enough. whether it's just doing an interview like this or a play by play or just making content in general. If you are not authentic, there will be people that sniff that out and never come back. So just be authentic. Find your voice, like Zach says, but you have to. And if you don't, you're not going to go very far.
You have exactly. If I wanted to be I'm not Roundball Renaissance. If I wanted to be Roundball Renaissance, then I would change up the way I do things, right? If I wanted to copy what Rob Perez does, then I would take my deep dives. My niche for basketball is history and what just happened, what's big, what's unique. I've been doing that for 11 years. My whole online content started with athlete birthdays on my college radio show Twitter. And when Keon Dooling engaged and followed back, I realized that people like when people wish them happy birthday. I've been doing it for a long time. Obviously, it's mostly only Cavs players now. And it sometimes I'll just post highlights of... I posted a David Nawaba Cavs highlight. It took me 30 minutes to find it this week. But I'm big on birthdays and history. I've been posting Today in History on Cavs and other sports for so long. And you stick to what you know, what you like. I'm not an X's and O's guy. I could break down game film just like anybody else, but that's not my niche. I've never played professionally. I don't have that type of analyst knowledge. I can describe what's happening, but I would need someone like yourself or another analyst to really do that dive, and I don't pretend to know what I don't know. So if I miss a game, I'm not going to post as much about it. I'm going to need to rewatch it first, and I'm not going to stir the pot either. I don't like clickbait. If I'm writing an article, I want to write it in my own voice. Maybe I'll change the headline if I need to, just to get a few more eyeballs, but that's not going to affect the writing. Once you open the story, you're getting the story. If I'm calling a game, I'm going to call it how I do it. It's usually 60-40, 60% info on the road team, 40% on the home team, 70% excitement for the home team, maybe 30% for the road team. Big plays, the road team will get the same excitement the home team will. I will never split that. I'm not at that point. We're not calling. I'm not yet at that level yet, but obviously when you get there, you get there. I've always appreciated visiting commentators, and something else to keep in mind, that will call a game winner for the other team with the same energy. The way Ian will do it on the Nets or Breen on the Knicks. And look, Joel Myers, Antonio Daniels are amazing, but they're like, oh, that's the game when it goes in. And that's cool in a way. It's like, all right, let's just get this over with. But I like when the visiting commentator, like Bob Rathbun of the Hawks, so good at that. And it stinks when they lose. Like when Colin Sexton hit that crazy three before Trey's half-court shot last season. I love the energy he had for the whole thing. It wasn't just Hawks. And yes, it's the home team, but you can't just be Homer. You can't just be a homer. If you're just going to be a homer, then you're probably not even doing visiting research.
I've got one last question for you before we transition to a little game and then start plugging all your stuff. If it hasn't been clear so far, let me reiterate. Truly love and respect every aspect of this game, including what you do. I think that based on who you are and who I've been able to see you through your content and through this interview, you're very goal-oriented. Is there a dream profession for you here? Like, what's the end line after this?
So, like many people, I would love to end up working in the NBA. There's 30 TV announcers. There's 30 radio announcers. There are 60 full-time play-by-play jobs in the NBA. Although, technically speaking, if we really want to get really technical with it, there's teams like the Knicks who have extras, and the Suns, some teams, and the Kings, where multiple guys fill in. Multiple folks fill in. I would love to be doing that. Obviously, there's nothing better. I would also just like to add the diversity in the NBA and the commentary space. I think is by far the best we've ever seen it. Honestly speaking, it's been mostly Caucasian males calling games for a very long time. So to see, Mark Jones and Kyle Draper, Eric Collins, so many people have broken in and done such a nice job with that. And that it's not even a big deal anymore. Kate Scott has come in, Lisa Byington. We've had others too that have come in and done some part-time play-by-play. But it's just so cool where we're at right now that they have that. But with that said, I would love to come in and do that in some way, whatever it is. I've been chasing that for a while. Had a lot of cool conversations with people in those roles. And there is no set path, and the same thing would say, if they could say one thing, is just keep grinding. The bet doesn't matter what division, what level. Every game is a rep. Every game is a chance to show your best self, and something crazy could happen in any game. Hey, I might be calling a high school game, hypothetically speaking, and there's this crazy full court shot. BR is going to pick that up. ESPN's going to pick that up. And if the call is solid, it's getting picked up all over. You got to be ready for the moment. You don't do it for that reason. You never do it for that. If 10 people saw my work, fine. Outside that game, if no one sees it, if none of my friends or family know it, fine. It's great when it does happen, though, but I don't call it for that. I'm not going to do some crazy call just because I know it'll go crazy online. Yes, I post my clips. All my colleagues, we all post our clips, but we're not doing it for the numbers. It's great when they come. Like, I'd love to spread the reach and get these kids and these athletes more views on their own play. But my voice happened to be the soundtrack. That's my connection to the game. But it's not for that reason. So, hopefully, we accomplish that dream. I don't think there's ever an off date. I will say that Drew Carter, Carl Jimenez, two of the modern guys, and Jacob Toby with the Spurs, all three of them under 30 years old, all younger than myself. Noah Eagles, 26, all younger than I am, now at 30. But, everyone has a different path. Everyone finds their way in. Tim Alcorn's the Cavs radio guy, started at 59. The Cavs TV guy, John Michael, was in law school. He had a day job. He had all this other stuff, and then he gets in. Everybody, that just happens to be two Cavs examples. I could run through all the different teams, but that's another episode, another day. Anyone could get in at any time. Just take your time, roll with it. Kevin Ray, who's the Suns TV voice, was at the organization 25 years before he got to be the TV announcer after Steve Albert retired. It's hard to break in, but you go for it. You bide your time, and you're always, whenever you see an opportunity, an opening, you go for it, you take it. And that's another piece of advice I would say. If you really want it, it'll happen.
Really appreciate you coming on. I think this has been a great episode. Before we start plugging all your stuff and where to find you, I have a little game. Just as this or that, I'm going to give you a couple scenarios, and you have to pick only one. If you're ready, I'm ready.
Let's do it.
Would you rather just call a basketball game solo, do the play-by-play, do the color all yourself, or have a very bland commentator?
I think you go by yourself because you can bring the energy. You can still rest. You don't need 40 minutes of talking or 48 minutes of straight talking during gameplay and free throws. You can let the game breathe. You can pick and choose. And with an analyst like that, they might not be adding much. And so it's kind of just like, yeah, the basket went in. It was a nice pass instead of the deeper explanation. So if that's not working and it's just 3 seconds of water sipping time for me extra every couple of times, I'd rather go run the game solo.
I want to tug on your Cavs heartstrings here a little bit on this one. Would you have rather won the 2007 finals or the 2018 finals?
All right, so funny, the 2008 finals, I talked about being younger and bedtimes and all that. I don't remember if I was even able to make it through those games. The one cool thing when I was younger, though, I think it started when I was 8 and the Cavs are blowing up when LeBron had the Cavs in the playoffs. Even though my bedtime was as early as it would be for any kid at that age, my parents say, if you're able to stay awake, you can watch any of these West Coast TNT Cavs games. And so I watched a lot of them in elementary school, more than most kids my age probably were. But I think it would have hit different when I was 22 than when I was 11, truthfully. I obviously being a big Cavs fan, I'm sure I would remember the finals a lot different. My first ever bet that I lost was in that finals. I lost $3 to Josh Freeman. All that had to happen, the Cavs just had to win one game, but they got swept. So he got his $3 in 5th grade. He went home a rich man that day. He probably went to the candy store after school, and he just let it fly. No, probably 2018. And that game 1 was insane. It's unfortunate that the JR incident happened. I hope that a lot of other Cavs fans have moved past that moment. I did pretty quickly. I'm more upset the way his career in Cleveland ended than that, just because it's like, oh, all the veterans are getting minutes. They fired Ty Lue, brought in Larry Drew, didn't even want to coach, and it got messy. What happened after that finals, not LeBron leaving. It's just the guys that were there and how they handled that next season. Terrible. So I would probably say 2018 because I felt like it was his time to leave anyway. It didn't feel like the way they had to keep reworking it. The roster they ended up with was so unsustainable for more than another year. So it was time, probably 2018. And I'm sure he'll give me another one. But my worst regret as a Cavs fan, I never got to watch Game 7 live when they actually did win because we booked a flight. It was a family trip like 4 months before. And I knew the whole series, once the finals started, like, oh, let's go 7. I can't watch Game 7. So as soon as Game 6 ended, I was thrilled and hyped. And I was also really sad that I'm missing the end of the Cavs trying to win their first title ever. But I wouldn't trade that one still for anything. Landed, found out on AOL.com, told me they won. I watched every basket. There's like a 15 or 16 minute YouTube video. And shout out to the 3-point play, a 4-point play from Shump. It was his only basket that game. But 2018 for sure.
And then this last one here, I'm going to make you pick between two titans of industry. And we've mentioned them a couple times in this show so far. Mike Breen or Marv Albert.
I want to first add and just say both are incredible, and the decision is not a dig on either one, but I think it depends what game we're watching. The way that Marv Albert is able to inflect and really make you feel like part of the broadcast and a big part of my own. I don't think I ever heard any commentator besides Walt Frazier and Marv Albert just say "folks" and really speak to the audience like that at the professional level. It's something I've tried to do a lot of without overdoing it, and kind of just when I'm talking, especially when I'm solo. Instead of just talking, I'll drop a "folks" in here and there. He did a really good job. I liked his energy. I liked the yes. Obviously, he wasn't as good in his older age, but it's hard. We're seeing that with Al Michaels right now. I still think he has it, but just the energy's dropped off a bit in older age with doing this for so long. And if you want a good story, you want poise, and I think you talk about that neutrality. I think Mike Breen nails that. Honestly, I don't think I can answer this one. Actually, I'm gonna say, if you're just looking for a game where you want to feel like you're part of it, you're going to take Marv Albert. If you want, it's a must-win game, and there's going to be a big moment, I think I'd actually rather have Breen, just because of how he delivers, how he sets up, and Mike Breen kind of has that Joe Buck thing going, where when there's a big play, he'll make his quick call, and he'll just get out of the way, and they'll let the analyst take over. So, situationally, I would take either one.
When I write these questions in my head, I kind of answer them for myself as well. And for this one, I ended up picking Marv Albert because it may not be the greatest call of all time for like everybody, but for me, he had my favorite call of all time. It was actually with LeBron and the Cavs. It was the 2008. It was either 2008 or 2009 Eastern
Orlando
Conference
Magic shot.
semis. No. When he dunked on Kevin Garnett, LeBron James with no regard for human life. So good. I remember being like middle school, just hyped as hell because that happened.
No, he did a really good. I remember. For some reason it's Marv. I also interchanged that with Wade dunking on Verajao.
Yeah,
I
that was a
always
great
kind of
one.
interchange it. Yeah, very. I mean, that the 2000s were fun. Good years. Growing up, we grew up with some good basketball years.
The double bang with Curry from way downtown is also like an elite call as well. But the Marv Albert one, probably just like for straight nostalgia, where I'm in my childhood bedroom watching that. I think that edges it out a little bit. But yeah, I think I went Marv Albert with that one for sure.
You can't go wrong. That's the thing here is when we're talking about. And the cool thing with them is they were both local and national, and there really aren't that many of those. It's them. It's Ryan Rucco, Ian, Mark Jones, Lisa Byington. I think does some playoffs. Joel Myers does some playoffs. Kevin Calabro, Eric Collins is doing prime now. Michael Grady's now both, and I think it's nice to get both sides of for an announcer to get both sides. We're doing neutral games like that, and versus when you're doing just for a specific team.
Yeah, absolutely. Two titans of industry. You really couldn't go wrong with either answer. Like I said, really appreciate you hopping on. I think it's been a great conversation. Where can people find you? What are you working on? Tell me about Across the Cavs. Tell me everything.
Yeah, so you can find the Across the Cavs podcast on Instagram. You can find podcast episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts. It's there. You can find the Instagram at Across the Cavs. On Twitter, I'm at Across Cavs. You can find your Cavs history, some game tweets, occasional pods with former players, with more coming up. So later this month, stay tuned for that. I'm actually going to have a few cool guests coming on. We're going to have some commentators and former Cavs both coming on, so you can get there. If you want to follow my writing, you can go to heavy.com, go to Zach Weiss. You can find anything. Got 6 or 7 articles out these last 2 days, just all about trades, guys coming back, other situations. I love writing about young guys having breakout performances, pitch and trade rumors that probably will never happen, but it works salary-wise, and if it works salary-wise, it's worth talking about, especially in today's day and age, and the apron age, and I always have to check. You can find any of my broadcasts on Instagram at the Triumphant Microphone _. That's a lot, but it's how it sounds, the Triumphant Microphone. Find me on TikTok at ZachWeiss23. And yeah, I'm kind of all over. If you type in Zach Weiss broadcast, it should take you to everything. On a Google search, on a platform, Zach Weiss. I different handles, but they're all kind of the same. Twitter, person with Triumphant23. Triumphant became my thing in college. As a Ravens fan, when Steve Smith came back and everyone said he was washed, I thought he would be of a triumphant return to Baltimore. And then eventually I just kind of transitioned to that becoming my go-to thing. So I'm triumphant everywhere. The Triumphant. If you type in the Triumphant on anything, you'll probably find me.
All those links are going to be in the description. While you're down there, check my description as well. Check my links. I have literally the same issue that you do, where I'm everywhere. Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, literally everywhere you can think of. I also have a Discord community that I would love for you to be a part of. That's going to do it for Zach. That's going to do it for me. Be kind. Tell somebody you love them. We'll see you in the next one.
Barely scraping by. Trying to stop puffing. I'm trying to be one of the greats.